Hello and good day everyone. On behalf of Associate Professor Dr. Raihanah and myself, I will be presenting the paper on the representation of empath in war narratives for this conference. So the selected novels for this particular research are The Corpse Washer by Sinan Antoon as well as The Yellow Birds by Kevin Powers. War is a theme in literary works that continues to capture the thoughts and imagination of writers and readers. Two highly critical and well-read novels that deal with the theme of war are The Corpse Washer and The Yellow Birds. Both these novels share the prominent theme within the context of the 2003 war on Iraq perpetrated by the United States. The Corpse Washer is a book written by Sinan Antoon, who is an Iraqi writer and poet born in Baghdad. The Corpse Washer won numerous awards such as the Arab American Book Prize, the Saif Gobash Banipal Prize for Arabic Literary Translation in 2014, and was longlisted for the 2014 Independent Foreign Fiction Prize. The Yellow Birds is a book written by Kevin Powers based on his experience serving in the U.S. military and was stationed in Mosul and Tal Afar. This book won the Guardian First Book Award, the Hemingway Foundation Award, the Anis Phil Wolf Book Award, and was also the finalist for the National Book Award and was shortlisted for Flaherty Dunnan First Nobel Prize. These two critically acclaimed novels were selected for their shared thematic concerns about the repercussions of war, albeit seen from two distinct perspectives. Powers' narrative portrays the effects of war during and after the encounter on the American soldiers. Antoon's narrative, however, paints the picture of the effects of war on the civilian Iraqis. Empath and empathic tendencies being the focal point of the research, what exactly are the definition of empath and how are they described? According to Judith Orloff, an empath is someone who is highly aware of the emotions of those around them, to the point of feeling those emotions themselves. They also experience stronger emotional stimulation than HSP and normal individuals. Their heightened sensitivity to even the slightest stimuli are analogous to their tendency to pause and check in certain situations. This greater awareness of environmental subtleties makes them prone to overstimulation. On the right side of the slide, you'll see a theoretical framework conceptualized by Graven et al. In 2019, which was adapted from Aaron and Aaron's 1997 journal article regarding the sensory processing sensitivity and the highly sensitive people, or HSP. So what are the differences between empath and HSP? Empath and HSP are used interchangeably within the discipline of psychology and education. Empath, like HSP, experiences stronger degree of emotions beyond empathy. Empath possesses increased emotional reactivity and empathy and a greater depth of information processing. These two factors create greater awareness of environmental subtleties, and thus empaths are easier to overstimulate. One of the ways to pick out empath from the crowd is by comparing them to the people around them. For example, Antoon's depiction of JAWAD'S personality trait is different from that of his father's, and likewise, Powers described Murphy in a different way than Bartow. Antoon and Power further emphasize the empathic traits in these two characters by relaying their inability to adapt to the environment or to let go of certain things, like JAWAD'S father and Bartow. They are also more attuned to the environment compared to the other characters. For JAWAD'S father, corpse washing is just another day of work, whereas for JAWAD, who handles countless dead bodies in the time of war, became traumatized and is constantly haunted by recurring nightmares. On the other hand, Murphy's sensibilities and deep sense of guilt due to his inability to reconcile with his acts of killing, an emotion that couldn't be fully understood even by Bartow, was what caused him to eventually die a gruesome death. Here, we'll see some of the examples of JAWAD sensitivities as an empath. The first example is how he realized that death has been a provider for his family the whole time. He said, "I imagined that death had followed me home. I couldn't stop thinking that everything that father had bought for us was paid for by death. Even what we ate was paid for by death." He constantly ruminates in his mind. He said, "When we had dinner that night, I watched father's fingers cut the bread and put food in his mouth. It was hard to believe that these were the same fingers that had rubbed a dead body only a few hours before." Jawad's sensitivity as an empath is also further exemplified in his inability to say no, and he's constantly wanting to do well. "I sought father's approval and wanted him to know that I too wanted to help him as my brother Emery had, and that I could face death like a man." He has a higher sense of guilt, even towards dead people. "After the sadness, I felt as I was saying goodbye to them, I was overtaken by guilt towards my mother, but I also thought of the dead. Who would wash them now?" Murphy's empathy traits, on the other hand, are shown in the following examples. Murphy has an inability to disengage his mind from his actions. When the colonel called war as a great violence in the cause of good, he asked a fellow soldier, "You think this is really the most important thing we'll ever do, Bartle?" Murphy also has a sense of accountability and strong morality. "I'd had this idea once that you had to grow old before you died. I still feel like there is some truth to it, because Daniel Murphy had grown old in the 10 months I'd known him," Bartle said. He also eventually became neurotic. Murphy showed a chronic state of overstimulation through showing his regrets about the situation and avoidance of the general affairs. The traits of a highly sensitive people in Jawad and Murphy is also found in the following instances. Number 1, their emotional reactivity. When stimulated, they both exhibit a greater emotional reactivity that contributed to their internal conflicts. Number 2 is their reclusiveness. Both characters show a penchant for reclusiveness and signs of adapting depression symptoms. Number 3, using numbness as a coping mechanism. Both Jawad and Murphy use numbness to put their emotions in check and to prevent it from overwhelming them. Number 4 is their inability to make peace. The detrimental result is shown in their recurring nightmares and severe depression that took hold of both their lives. Here we have come to a conclusion. In both Jawad and Murphy, the novelists Antoon and Powers respectively captured the complexity of highly sensitive characters who are having to make human choices and face the repercussions of those choices. The external and internal conflicts suffered by these characters are made worse by their psychological makeup. This comparative study verifies the benefits of using psychological concepts as a lens to examine literary representations of character development in the context of war. If you have any comments and suggestions, please do contact us in the following emails.